Hey everyone, Duke here, and today we're going to talk about Master Vow of the Disciple and the changes that it entails. We've got adept weapons and an awesome looking sparrow up for grabs, so let's get to it. First off, Master Vow is 1580 power throughout, and I would recommend being at that power or at least very close. The other main changes are added champions in every single encounter, no radar, as well as more shields with match game. Having those extra champions and having 3 of the 4 encounters with both overloads and unstoppables in the encounter means there's a lot more planning and preparation that's going to go into not only your own weapon choices, but also your teammates. And not only that, but you will definitely want to prepare for the various shields due to match game as well. The opening area of the raid has no changes from normal, other than the solar shields that are there now having match game applied, so you may want to have a bit of solar, but it's nothing worth concerning yourself over too much. In terms of loot, the challenge for the week looks to guarantee you an adept weapon, but unlike Master Vogue, there is no set rotation of one specific encounter for one specific weapon. The positive side of this is there also seems to be a checkoff system where you will not get the same adept weapon twice until you get all of them. Getting into encounters, Acquisition has a few main changes. You will still want to split up your teams 2, 2, and 2 as normal, with an attacker and a defender. However, the glyph keepers in each of the rooms will now be overloads, which means your attackers need to be running overload. What I did personally was run Void with Overload Grenade, and on top of that I ran both Unstoppable Pulse and Overload SMG on my arms. What this allowed me to do was make a quick weapon swap before going into any glyph keeper room to my SMG to have an extra overload stun in case my grenade either missed or maybe wasn't available, and will be a super important tip for future seasons once Overload Grenade is no longer available. The other big change for this encounter is that the taken knights that you need to kill to get your room callouts, as well as the Scorn Ravengers throughout, have solar shields, which again with the match game modifier means you need solar. Gjallarhorn was already top tier for this encounter and is now even better, and Sleeper would work great here as well. And I found a lot of great value personally from running Explosive Personality in my energy slot as my solar weapon and add clear weapon of choice, but just make sure that you have something solar as your energy weapon as well. There's no other types of shield here, so solar is all you need. One final tip, especially for runners, is to be running the Lucent Finisher mod. This is a mod I will be mentioning throughout the video as it is an absolutely huge deal towards keeping heavy topped off and making these encounters easier than they would be otherwise. Do note that in future seasons, if this mod is not available, the Aeon exotics also can create heavy when finishing champions, but the Aeons only make it for your teammates, versus Lucent Finisher making it for both yourself and your teammates. Outside of that, running the proper ammo finders and scavengers for your weapons will also greatly help with any ammo economy issues as usual. The challenge for Acquisition really isn't too bad, just like in normal. We decided to play it slow and take on the 2 Unstoppables after the first 2 Glyph Keeper kills, causing us to take on 4 Unstoppables per round instead of 3, but gives the added benefit of not having to keep them alive for a longer period of time. I don't see the alternative strat of waiting for all 3 to be up before killing them to be too much different either though. 2 quick notes before we get into the next encounter. If you need any help completing any of these challenges or encounters on Master, I'll be running them quite often over the next few months on my stream at twitch.tv/dukeiscool, so come on by. Also, if you've never ran the normal version of the raid before and would like some of the more basic breakdowns of mechanics and such, I have a full video on every encounter that I will link below for your viewing pleasure. Next up is Caretaker. Now I may take some flack for this, as the third encounter is also extremely challenging, but personally I think this will be by far the most difficult encounter, especially when challenge comes around, and it's quite difficult as is. Starting with the positive side, there are no shields to worry about. The biggest change here is that the snipers that spawn in each corner of the room are now all overloads. These are absolutely crucial to take down and take down quickly, as they can either A, kill you as an ad clear person, B, kill your teammates as they are still snipers, or C, can allow the other ad spawns to build up if you're not able to get the overloads down quickly enough. As such, your 2 ad clear people absolutely must be running overload weapons, and I'd also highly recommend Overload Grenade on Void if possible. Outside of that, I'd still recommend most others run overload weapons as well, just in case someone goes down and an overload needs to be stunned. Lucent Finisher is once again huge in this encounter, as it allows you to easily use a few heavy shots to get the overload into finisher range, and then give you that same ammo back and even a little extra if pairing with a scavenger mod for your heavy. As within normal, the pastas that the Caretaker shoots out need to be consistently dealt with. It did feel like these did more damage and that they potentially even had more of them than in normal, but definitely keep these in mind, as even if they don't kill you through damage, they can also stack your darkness quickly, which will automatically kill you if it hits 10. This job is something that should be shared by all players of your team whenever there's a brief moment of downtime from your normal roll. The runner's job is pretty similar to normal, just be aware that the wizards can hit you quite hard in the darkness room, and also seem to maybe be a little bit more aggressive than normal. You definitely want to be quick and purposeful with your movement and your pathing as a runner in Master. I'd also recommend some sort of AoE ad clear special weapon, such as a grenade launcher or fusion rifle, as again, the ads really pile up. And during challenge, where you can only grab one symbol at a time, the ad clear is going to become even more important. Things like chain reaction and reservoir burst are going to be absolutely amazing for this encounter. Note that dying is especially bad in this encounter, as it will not only put you down for some time until you're rezzed, but due to the way the encounter is spread out, it will also pull someone out of their position and put them behind as well. Obviously, no one ever tries to die, but really focus on playing your life throughout this. And when this encounter is the challenge, ads are going to pile up even more, as like I said, the runners are only able to go for one symbol at a time, and that forces the encounter to go slower than normal. Basically, everyone really needs to be responsible for their jobs here, and do their best to help with a bit of ad clear and pasta clear whenever possible. As for DPS, it didn't seem to be too much of a check with everyone within a few levels of 1580, but I could definitely see it becoming an issue if some or most of your team was too much lower, or maybe had less valuable weapons. Sleeper was a great option here for me personally, as it could do really well in the overloads, as well as just being a solid and easy to use DPS tool. And don't forget that if your ad clearers are using Loosen Finisher on the champions, there should be heavy on both sides of the map that everyone can grab before going up to the next floor. In fact, this is a big deal. Definitely want to try to get as many finishers to get that heavy for everyone as possible. Next, we have the third encounter, Exhibition. A couple of big changes here. First, all the Glyph Keepers are now champions, just like in the first encounter. But not only that, they're actually different types of champions, with the Scorn Glyph Keepers as overloads and the Taken Glyph Keepers as unstoppables. Secondly, there are now a lot of shields. We've got Void Shields on some of the Taken, and an absurd amount of Solar Shields on some of the Scorn. A lot of this encounter is going to come down to preparation and making sure to have both Unstop and Overload available when running into the Glyph Keeper champions, while also having enough shield break to kill the enemies. Gjallarhorn was again a great option here, with Null Composure a nice option to break both Void Shields as well as give additional AoE ad clear. As with the first encounter, you can again have Unstoppable and Overload mods on your gloves, but it's going to be a little harder of a backup plan and more in a dire situation, as there's not always a good place to go into your inventory quickly. I personally started with Unstoppable as my weapon of choice, while having Void Overload grenades to be able to deal with both types of champions. But I'd recommend having a few people dedicated to an Overload weapon as well, with preferably most or everyone running the Overload grenade mod. Again, the Overload grenades are only viable for this season's artifact, unless future seasons end up having another similar option, but either way, you definitely want to try to have a couple people for each of the champion types. One huge tip I'd give as the Taken Relic runner is to take advantage of a very specific setup. If you run Void Siphon on your helmet, you can make orbs with this relic. Pairing this with the fragment that gives Devour on orb pickup will give you Devour and allow for a lot more survivability. Not only this, but throwing on elemental armaments will allow you to create void elemental wells, and Volatile Flow actually works as well with this relic, so you can absolutely annihilate enemies with this combination. You can also throw on a Well of Tenacity for that extra survivability whenever you pick up one of these void elemental wells. Overall, the first two rooms aren't bad, just like in normal, but the third and fourth room can get really hairy. I'd recommend the Taken Relic and one non-relic person go left if the first blight is on right, or right if the first blight is on left, to be able to have that Taken user cleanse the second blight, and the two of them can take down their Glyph Keeper together. Note that the side that has the second blight to cleanse will always have the Scorn Overload, so make sure that the non-relic user has Overload and makes the callouts after killing it. You can also go back for the callouts afterwards, but I prefer to at least get that first callout taken care of. From there, have the group of 2 go across to meet the group of 4. Get everyone cleansed and push up the respective staircase. This is how I always recommended doing it in normal anyway, but it feels even more paramount in Master. For the second set of Glyph Keepers, just focus on getting them spawned in and melt them ASAP. Make sure that your beam user is in position to kill that second knight that will be spawning on the middle platforms, as you're going to need that extra 40 seconds to make these last callouts and then open the door and get everything transitioned for the fourth room. One extra tip as the Taken Relic holder is I started dropping the relic after taking care of the last Taken Blight to be able to help stun and melt the Overload Glyphkeeper that would be spawning on me. The fourth and final room is challenging, but not as bad as the third room. I'd recommend the same split here with the Taken Relic and one non-Taken person helping them on the side opposite the first Blight. This room honestly isn't terrible as long as you keep slaying out. For the second half of the room, I'd highly recommend not standing on the middle platform where the knight spawns, but instead pushing all the way to the door and slaying everything out on the way there, and then chilling here and basically kind of pushing back out towards the last two Glyphkeepers. This allows for everything to be in front of you and not end up surrounded by all sides. And finally, we have Rhulk. Honestly, this may be the easiest of the 4 Master encounters and definitely has very limited changes compared to normal. Just like in Exhibition, the Glyphkeepers will now be a Taken Unstop and an Overload Squirn respectively, so be sure to have the ability to stun these champions. You can again take advantage of weapon switching, void overload grenades, or just having a few people run each mod type. Other than that, the only difference is the void shields on some of the Taken that spawn in the far back corners during the downstairs phase, so be sure to have a bit of void. Everything else is exactly the same with absolutely zero changes in the DPS platform section of the fight. At level, a 2-phase can be reasonably comfortable with a normal Divinity and Izzy Rocket or a linear fusion rifle setup, but a safe 3-phase will definitely be more than achievable even if damage is a bit lacking. That's all for my guide to Master Vow the Disciple. Don't forget that I will be doing helps for both the weekly challenges and final boss over the coming weeks on my stream, so come on by if you need some help. And as always, thank you for watching, and have a wonderful day.